There is another history beneath the one you know. A history written not in dates or battles, but in symbols, in whispers, in doorways carved into stone and into the human soul. It is the history of the mystery schools. Not schools in the modern sense. There were no grades, no diplomas, no lectures. There were thresholds, trials, silence, and memory. The mystery schools were not created, they were remembered, built by those who knew that the human being was more than mind and matter, more than instinct and flesh. They knew the soul had to be awakened, and that awakening had a structure, a path, a pattern, a process. On the surface, these schools seemed to vanish, destroyed, burned, swallowed by time. But in truth, they simply went deeper. Because sacred knowledge cannot die, it only changes form. For every age, there are those who carry the current, not as doctrine, but as presence. Not in temples of stone, but in the inner architecture of awareness. The mystery schools were not places of escape. They were places of return. Return to self, to source, to silence. To enter such a school was not a social event. It was a ritual death. The initiate had to let go of everything they thought they were. Name, role, belief, fear, all burned in the fire of initiation. The purpose, not power, not status, but alignment. To remember the original design, to wake the inner fire, to walk the spiral of death and rebirth while still alive. And yet, these schools were never mainstream. They did not advertise. They did not recruit. They watched, they waited, they whispered until the right soul heard the call. And when that soul stepped forward, the world around them began to shift. Nothing looked the same. The air felt charged. Dreams grew louder. And the journey inward began. What makes a mystery school a mystery? It cannot be taught. It must be experienced. Its truth is not handed down, but drawn up from the depths of being. Its knowledge does not explain, it transforms. This is why they stayed hidden, because the real temple is built in silence, in darkness, in stillness. Because what they offer cannot be purchased, owned, or displayed. It can only be lived. These currents flowed beneath Egypt, Greece, Persia, India, Tibet. And they still flow, not through textbooks, but through breath, through dream, through the subtle moments that call you to remember what you never learned, but have always known. We are taught that history is linear, that we've advanced, that the ancients were primitive. But the mystery schools knew otherwise. They knew we are not moving forward, we are circling inward. And the center, the flame, is the same in every age. If you felt the pull, the ache, the echo that says, there is more than this, then you've already stepped onto the path. Then the mystery is no longer outside you, it has begun to stir within you. You are not discovering something new, you are remembering something ancient, and it has waited patiently for your return. You were never meant to worship in the temple. You were meant to be changed by it. In ancient Egypt, the temple was not a church. It was not a place to ask for favors from the gods. It was a device, a machine built to align the human soul with something far beyond the visible. A structure of stone, but more than stone. An instrument tuned to resonance, to the stars, to the breath of the divine within the body. Every wall was a page, every chamber a trial, every step forward a surrender. The mystery schools of Egypt were not open to all. They did not teach in words, they taught in initiation. The temples of Karnak, Luxor, Abydos, Edfu, they were living maps, diagrams of the soul's journey from unconscious shadow to awakened flame. You did not enter as a tourist. You entered as a question, and if you were sincere, you would not leave the same. The journey was symbolic, yes, but also physical. A literal path through corridors, hallways, dark chambers carved into silence. A descent into shadow. A walk through the duat, the underworld of the soul. You would be blindfolded, alone, led in silence through passageways where your fears were not imagined, but invoked. You would meet death, not physical death, but the death of certainty, of identity, of self-image. Only those who faced this death with stillness were allowed to proceed, because on the other side of darkness was not knowledge, but vision, an inner light that is not given to you, but awakened from within. This was the secret of the Egyptian temple. It did not teach, it remembered you to yourself. The great statue of Osiris, not a god to be worshipped, but a symbol of the inner being who dies and rises. His story was your story, his dismemberment your fragmentation, his return your rebirth. The sacred chambers under the pyramids were not tombs, they were wombs, places where silence and pressure gave birth to something new, not a new belief, a new being. The high priest was not a preacher, he was a mirror, a gatekeeper, a guide who had walked the spiral of death and return many lifetimes before you. He would not explain, he would observe. And when the flame inside you stirred, he would simply say, "You may proceed." Everything in the temple had purpose. The geometry, the symbols, the acoustics, the way light entered only on specific days. This was not art. It was architecture for the soul. To walk its halls was to walk your own spine. To enter its innermost chamber was to meet your own hidden self. And when the journey was complete, you did not receive a title. You received yourself, transformed, awake, silent. The temple was never a destination, it was a mirror that moved. It showed you not the gods you longed for, but the God you forgot you are. And if the stones still hum with silence today, it is because the temple is still waiting. Some rituals were so sacred, they were never spoken of again. Not out of fear, but because language cannot hold what is meant to be embodied. In the land of Greece, among the olive trees and marble stones, there lived a silence deeper than philosophy. It was called Eleusis. For nearly 2,000 years, the Eleusinian mysteries were held in secret, generation after generation, from peasants to emperors. All came, all descended, all were changed. But no one ever revealed what truly happened inside. To do so was forbidden, not by law, but by something deeper. The understanding that sacred things lose their power when reduced to explanation. The mysteries centered on the myth of Demeter and Persephone, a daughter stolen into the underworld, a mother grieving, a descent, a return. But this was not a story. It was a map, a blueprint of the soul's journey into darkness and back again transformed. Those who entered Eleusis were not told a tale, they were led into it. They walked the sacred road from Athens to Eleusis, in silence, in preparation. They fasted, they cleansed, they waited, and then they descended into the Telesterion, the great initiation hall, dark, closed, charged. What happened next, no one knows. And yet everyone who passed through emerged with a light in their eyes. Even centuries later, philosophers would say, "Who has seen Eleusis no longer fears death." Why? Because they had already died and returned, not bodily, but psychically. The initiation was not a show, it was an encounter with shadow, with silence, with the roots of one's own being, and then with the spark that survives. Some say a sacred drink was given, Kykeona brew of barley, mint, and perhaps something more. Something that opened the inner eye, that blurred the veil, that cracked the mind just enough to let the mystery in. But the drink was only a door. The journey itself was inward. To pass through Eleusis was to experience the ancient truth, that life is not linear, that descent is part of the return, that the underworld is not punishment, but preparation. This is what Persephone taught. You go down, not to be lost, but to be remade. You lose what you thought you were, to remember what you've always been. And when you return, you carry seeds from the darkness, seeds that will grow into wisdom if you tend them. The Eleusinian mysteries died with time, suppressed by empires, forgotten by history, but not lost, because what they offered was not held in text or temple, it was held in the structure of the soul, and that remains. Perhaps you too have walked the sacred road without knowing it, felt the call to descend, faced the silence in your own underworld, and risen, not healed, but aware. If so, then Eleusis lives on. In you, the mystery is not remembered in words, but in what they cannot say. There once was a city where knowledge burned brighter than the sun. Its name was Alexandria, a place where scrolls breathed, where science and spirit walked hand in hand, where the known met the ineffable. At its center stood a flame, not literal, but luminous. A flame fed by thought, by language, by silence between the stars. And from this fire rose the Hermetic mysteries. Hermeticism was not a religion. It was not dogma. It was a lens, a way of seeing reality as a living mirror, a principle that whispered, "As above, so below, as within, so without, as the soul, so the cosmos." It taught that the universe is not dead matter, but conscious structure, that every movement of a planet, every shift in the wind, every flicker of the human heart was part of a vast intelligent tapestry. The Hermetic texts, attributed to Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, were not instruction manuals. They were invocations, written not to explain, but to awaken, written in riddles, layered with silence, words that meant nothing to the shallow reader, but everything to the one ready to dissolve. Hermeticism did not offer belief, it offered transmutation, the ability to turn the lead of your being into gold. Not metaphorical gold, not greed, not wealth, but radiance, consciousness, alignment with the fire that lives in all things. And so came the alchemists. Not men in robes, not magicians in stories, but initiates who understood that to change the world, you must first change the self. Their laboratories were sacred spaces, their furnaces, symbols of the inner flame, their metals, reflections of soul states. They wrote of mercury, sulfur, and salt, but they meant mind, spirit, and body. They painted riddles on parchment, but what they sought was union with the divine through transformation. The great library of Alexandria held more than books. It held the memory of lost civilizations, the echoes of Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, India, Babylon. It held scrolls on the geometry of spirit, on breath, on resonance, on the inner architecture of awakening. And so, it was burned, because knowledge that frees is dangerous, because fire, when not controlled, spreads. But Hermetic thoughts survived, not in the ashes, but in the margins, in secret texts, in stone engravings, in the minds of those who remembered. It passed through the alchemists of the Middle Ages. It whispered through the mystics of the Renaissance. It seeded the roots of modern psychology. It shaped the unseen structure beneath Western thought. You feel it when you read something ancient, and your skin responds before your mind understands. You feel it when a symbol opens something you never knew was locked. That is the Hermetic flame. It cannot be taught, but it can be caught. And if you are reading these words with stillness, perhaps it is already burning inside you. What if the truth was never meant to be taught, but only remembered? The Gnostics believed that the divine was not outside you, but within. They didn't ask you to follow, they asked you to see. And that was dangerous. Gnosis means knowledge, but not of books or doctrines. It is direct knowing, knowing that rises from silence, from fire, from something ancient inside you that was never truly lost. To the Gnostics, the material world was not home. It was a veil, a dream layered with illusion, a creation not of the highest source, but of a lesser force. They called it the demiurge, a being that shaped the physical to trap the spiritual, a force not evil but blind, blind to the light it had buried, blind to the flame it could not destroy. And inside that flame was you, the soul, the spark, the sleeping piece of the divine, wrapped in matter, waiting to awaken. The Gnostics saw Christ not as a savior, but as a mirror, a being who remembered who and what he truly was, and came to remind others that they could do the same. The kingdom of God is within you, not a metaphor, a map. But what happens when people begin to awaken without priests, without permission, without fear? They become uncaged. And so the fire was hunted, scrolls burned, voices silenced, texts buried in caves and deserts, bodies broken, souls scattered. But the flame remained. In the Nag Hammadi texts, long hidden beneath Egyptian sands, we read the whispers that survived. Asterisk, the Gospel of Thomas. Asterisk, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Asterisk, the secret book of John. These are not stories, they are keys. Fragments of a language spoken soul to soul, not mind to mind. The Gnostic flame is not about rebellion, it is about remembrance. It is what stirs inside you when you know something's wrong but can't yet name it. It is what aches when the outer world doesn't reflect the truth you carry within. It is the silent voice that says, "You are not this mask. You are not this cage. You are the one who watches and remembers." Gnostics walked the same path as initiates in Egypt, as seekers in Eleusis, as alchemists in secret rooms. They lit the same fire, faced the same shadow, carried the same burden, to know truth in a world built on forgetting. And still the flame moves. In you, in your questions, in your hunger for something real. It cannot be taught in schools. It cannot be owned by temples. It cannot be contained by history, because it is not history. It is now. The Gnostic flame is not a story. It is a spark inside the soul, waiting for breath. What if the gold they sought was never metal? What if it was you? We imagine the alchemist in robes, surrounded by fire, pouring strange liquids into ancient flasks. But the true alchemist does not work with metal. He works with shadow. He does not melt matter, he melts the self. The laboratories of old were not for experiments. They were mirrors, places of stillness, silence, flame. Everything was symbolic, but nothing was metaphor. The furnace was the heart, the vessel was the soul, the substance being transformed was the human being. In alchemical tradition, there are three great stages of the work. Asterisk, nigredo, the blackening, the breakdown, the chaos, the death, ego collapses, identity dissolves, nothing makes sense. Asterisk, albedo, the whitening, the purification, the silence, the clearing. Old layers are burned. What remains is refined. Asterisk, rubedo, the reddening, the illumination, the integration, the flame. The soul shines not because it was polished, but because it was real. These are not chemical processes. They are existential crucibles. The true alchemist enters the nigredo willingly. He allows his false layers to rot. He steps into darkness, not to suffer, but to see. He watches as he becomes, not who he thought he was, but something unnamed, raw, empty, still. And then, from the quiet, comes the glow. Not sudden, not loud, just warmth, clarity, truth with no mask. This is the gold. The philosopher's stone is not an object. It is a state of being where all inner opposites are reconciled, where the serpent stops devouring and begins to spiral upward. Alchemists spoke in symbols because truth cannot be caged in language. They drew circles within circles, serpents eating their tails, triangles splitting into four, Sol and Luna joined in sacred union. Not puzzles, but maps. Each transformation in the lab was a reflection of one within. And so, their texts remain encrypted, not because they wish to hide, but because you must earn the flame. To read an alchemical manuscript is to look into your own psyche, written in smoke. You see the fire, you feel the pressure, you recognize that something inside you wants to become something else. Not escape, not ego, just essence uncoiled and illuminated. The world today has forgotten the alchemists, but their work continues. Every time you face your fear and stay, every time you dissolve your identity without collapse, every time you let grief burn through you and rise softer, stronger, clearer, you are doing the great work. You are the vessel. You are the lead. You are the fire. You are the gold. And the only true laboratory is your life. The temples have crumbled. The scrolls are ash. But the mystery still speaks. Not in chants or rituals, but in stories, in symbols, in dreams, in shadows we call psychology. The mystery schools were never destroyed. They were translated, moved from stone into symbol, from outer temples into the inner architecture of the mind. Carl Jung saw it. He called it the collective unconscious, the memory of all souls layered beneath thought. He saw the archetypes, the shadow, the wise old man, the anima, the trickster, the reborn self. He knew they weren't inventions. They were echoes. The same lessons once taught in temples, now playing out in therapy, in myth, in the cinema. The hero's journey is not fiction, it's initiation, descent, death, rebirth, integration. The same pattern walked by Osiris, by Persephone, by Christ, by you. Look closely. Asterisk The Matrix. Asterisk Star Wars. Asterisk Inception. Asterisk Dune. Asterisk Interstellar. Asterisk Arrival. These are not just films. They are modern mystery plays. Alchemical dramas disguised as entertainment, carriers of hidden light. Even architecture whispers it. Domes echo the heavens. Labyrinths wind like inner journeys. Temples stand in concrete, waiting for modern pilgrims who feel something they cannot name. Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, esoteric branches of Sufism, Kabbalah, Taoism. Each carries pieces of the same code. Each keeps one door cracked open for the soul still seeking. But in this age, the mystery school is no longer a place. It is a pattern. And that pattern lives in the way you confront your fear, hold your silence, walk into endings with your eyes open. It lives in the therapist's chair, in the artist's brush, in the musician's chord that hits your chest like a truth you forgot you knew. The sacred has moved from mountaintop sanctuaries into the very center of your life. You are always being initiated, but now it happens in real time. In heartbreak, in birth, in collapse, in vision. The mystery still teaches, but now it uses asterisk dreams instead of mantras, asterisk emotions instead of robes, asterisk stillness instead of incense. And it waits, not in hidden rooms, but in the pauses between your thoughts, waiting for you to stop scrolling, to stop running, to stop forgetting, and to finally ask, why does this feel so familiar? Because the temple was never outside you, and the echo has always been inside your bones. There is no more temple to enter because you have become the temple. The mystery is no longer passed from priest to pupil, from master to disciple, from one hidden room to another. Now, it passes through you. You are the initiate, not in name, but in experience. Not because you joined a school, but because life initiated you. Every descent you survived, every silence you surrendered to, every moment you died to the old self and chose to rise anyway. That was the rite. That was the passage. That was the fire. You didn't need a robe. You needed to break. You didn't need a scroll. You needed to burn. You didn't need to be accepted by a gatekeeper because the gate was always inside. This is the secret all the mystery schools guarded, that the final initiation cannot be given to you. It must be lived. No one will anoint you. No one will declare, "You've made it." No bell will ring. But one day in the quiet, you will realize you are no longer seeking, you are remembering. And that is the true beginning. You are now the vessel for the fire you once searched for. You are the one who carries the codes for those still wandering in the dark. You are the mirror, the guide, the living scroll. The mystery doesn't ask you to teach, it asks you to embody, to live in such a way that presence becomes transmission, that silence becomes language, that your walk is a rite and your breath a sacred name. And so now, there is no veil. There is no barrier between you and the divine. There is only a choice, to live awake or to sleep again. And if you are reading these words with a still heart, you already know your answer. You have walked through Egypt, through Eleusis, through fire, through shadow, through the echo and the return. Not by history, but by being. The mystery is alive, not because someone kept it safe, but because you never stopped listening. You are the temple. You are the flame. You are the last gate and the one who opens it.